Shalom and welcome. I'm Rabbi Eric Tokajer, and our question today comes from Carrie. And Carrie asks, Rabbi, within the body of Messiah, there seems to be a misunderstanding of the concept of grace and law. As a matter of fact, it's looked many times as if it's grace versus law, and not grace and law mixed in one body of understanding as the Torah actually teaches. We find, for instance, that Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord way back in the book of Genesis. As a matter of fact, it's interesting to understand that the word law, which is translated from the Hebrew word Torah, doesn't actually mean law, but means instructions. And it comes from the word yara in Hebrew, which means to point to, as if drawing an arrow and firing in a direction. And so the law is really God's instructions for us. When we get to the Brit Chadashah, the New Covenant, we find things like Rav Shaul saying, or Rabbi Paul saying, that do we nullify the law by faith? God forbid. Instead, or rather, we establish the Torah by our faith. Yeshua says, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. You see, we understand that the law is not the way we are redeemed, but our response to that relationship and that redemption with God. We have grace and law. As a matter of fact, the Torah was given to Israel because of God's chesed, or his grace, his rachamim, his mercy for Israel and for mankind, so that there would be a way to redeem mankind back in relationship to God. So we don't see grace and law or grace and Torah as diametrically opposing forces, but rather we see the Torah as being God's grace for mankind, his instructions for us to live according to his plan so that we can have the fullness of his blessings in our life. Understand, it is not grace versus Torah. It is actually that the Torah is God's grace for us. Thank you for tuning in again this week. If you have a question that you'd like an answer to, feel free to message me on Facebook at Rabbi Eric Tokajer. Thank you and shalom.